Hey guys, so I finally decided to do the first oil change on this new EcoDiesel. I moved it out to the gravel portion of the driveway so that if I do spill a little bit of it, it won't be such a big deal and I won't stain my concrete. But basically I'm just going to go ahead and do the first oil change. I've got a little over 4,000 miles. I think I'm coming up on 4,500. So, that very first one I like to do a little bit early to get all the break-in materials out of it. So I've got the Valvoline MST 5W40 here, which, as you know, is stamped with the Fiat Chrysler MS12991 certification on it. This is the least expensive oil that I have been able to find that is spec'd for the new Gen 3 EcoDiesel. Got the Mopar filter here. There's the part number on that in case you hadn't seen it before. And I'm going to put a Fumoto valve in. Now the one I got is the F106S, and I'm assuming that this is going to fit. I haven't found an actual listing for the 2020 EcoDiesel yet, but this is the one that was listed for the prior gen, so I'm hoping that they kept the threads and everything the same and that this will work. So that's the materials going to be using. Now obviously I'm going to have more oil than just this. I've got 3 jugs of this in there, because this engine supposedly takes 8.5 quarts, so I've got plenty of that. Also, I'm going to send off a sample for analysis. Boom, it's magic. So I've got the Blackstone canister here for oil analysis. I'm going to take a sample and send it off to them just because I'm curious to know a little bit more about this factory fill oil that FCA is using on these 2020 EcoDiesels. So that'll be interesting to see how that comes back. Tell me a little bit more about these engines. So without further ado, let's get under the truck and see what the situation is. Now, one thing about it, this engine is designed and built in Italy, so everything on it should be metric. So I'm just going to grab the metric rail. That should be all we need. Okay, so like I've showed you guys before, on these new DT body rams with the new EcoDiesel, you have this cross member here that's said to be in the way, but actually it's not really in the way. I don't know if the camera's doing it justice, but the drain bolt is not over the center of the cross member. It's actually kind of over the outer edge of it. I'm trying to get a better view, but it's hard to do up under here laying in the gravel. So anyway, the point is the cross member doesn't really get in the way. You've got plenty of access there. So with that Fumoto valve, what I did was I got the one that has the short nipple, because I was afraid that if I got the one that had, the really long nipple, that it might actually interfere with that cross member. But the short nipple version should be fine. So it's not really an access issue and it's not really a big deal. What I'm going to do is just get a piece of cardboard and use that to direct the oil flow away from the cross member, and that should keep it from getting all over everything. Okay, so I learned something new. Even though this engine is an Italian engine, I found that a standard 1/2 inch socket fits a whole lot more snug on that bolt. So scratch what I just said a minute ago. You do want a standard set of sockets, specifically the 1/2 inch one. Now, I already started to loosen this up and I found that this bolt is very loose. I'm gonna go ahead and take this off of here. I gave it one little spin and it just came right off loose. So I'm gonna be able to get in there now and unscrew the rest of it with my fingers. But there was not much torque at all on this thing from the factory. So that's quite interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this drain bolt out, and I'm gonna put my little piece of cardboard up in here like this, and that should direct it right into my drain pan. I apologize for the shaky camera. Normally I would have this on a lift right now, but our lift is being tied up with another vessel at the moment, so having to do it the old-fashioned way here on the ground. But let me go ahead and take this out, and then we'll check the Fumoto and see if it's gonna fit. Okay, so that was par for the course. Nothing went the way that I planned, and I ended up making a big mess anyway. So that's the reason why I want to put a Fumoto valve on here. I got oil all over everything. Yuck. So I'm going to have to clean this up a little bit before I proceed and check the Fumoto valve. Now the instructions on the Fumoto valve say that you should use a crescent wrench on the body of the valve an additional 1/8 of a turn. Do not over tighten. So you're not going to crank that thing down and make it really tight. Like I just showed you, the factory bolt was in there fairly loose, so we're not going to put this one in real tight either. I did manage to get a sample of oil to send off, and as is typical with the diesel, the oil that came out was already pretty nasty looking stuff, really black, a lot of soot in it. So gonna be interesting to see. Now these things, like I said, hold 8.5 quarts, so you're gonna have to have a larger than standard pan. A 4-quart pan is not gonna work, 5-quart pan is not gonna work. You're gonna have to get a real big, high capacity oil drain pan here, so that you have enough capacity to drain everything out. All right, so it looks like this Fumoto valve is gonna thread in just fine. So right there is where it's snug, and of course you have to orient this thing to where you can get to the little trigger, the lever, for future use. So once I give it the 1/8 of a turn with the crescent wrench, it should put it right where I need it to be. Okay, so I have it installed now, and I've got the lever turned to where I can get to it, and you can see the plastic safety clip on there also. See that black safety clip? They started shipping that, it used to be optional, but I've noticed they've started shipping that with the valves. So that little safety clip just gives you some additional protection from that lever, you know, coming open while the vehicle's in use. I've never seen that happen before, but the clip just kind of gives you a little more peace of mind. So it's worth it to go ahead and pop that on there. But as you can see, I have plenty of clearance, even with that short nipple. So now in the future, what I can do is just get a piece of tube and stick it on that nipple, and then you can very easily direct the oil into your drain pan. So really, really nice little feature here. Going to be very handy to keep that diesel oil where you want it, and keep it off your chassis and off your hands and arms and off the floor, you know. So this thing is usually around 25 or 30 bucks, and it's a nice investment. So there you go. Okay, so the next step obviously is the oil filter. These new Gen 3 filters are all made together. Formerly you could just buy the element, but for some reason these new ones are all made together. Now again, there's some people on the forums that have seen these where you can twist that and take them apart, but it's kind of strange because a lot of them you cannot take apart. I tried to twist this one. I was afraid I was going to break it, and it says on there, well, the camera won't focus, but it says do not remove right there. Come on, camera. See, do not remove. And when I tried to twist it, like I said, it wouldn't come out. So anyhow, it's just one piece made together, but you're going to have a 27 millimeter socket, great big socket, to get on there. And it tells you that this is 25 Newton meters, which is not very much in foot-pounds, so you don't want to over tighten this either. All this housing is plastic, and if you crack that, you're going to have an oil leak, so don't over tighten this either. Again, if you've got a ram, the ram application is really easy. You can see the oil filter right here. There's nothing in the way. But if you have the Jeep application, they moved all of the air box and everything over here to this side, and it covers up the oil filter. So you're probably going to have to spend some time moving stuff out of the way to make access to the filter. Thankfully on the Ram here, it's pretty simple. So I'll just go ahead and screw this one off and pop the new one in. So this is pretty interesting. This is the factory filter that I just took out, and it says push and rotate lock direction. So this one is removable. And when I turned it the other direction, the filter element just came right out of this one. That's kind of strange. Let's try this again. So I twisted it. See, the filter element comes right out. Interesting. So I wonder why it is, but the part number, I looked at the part number on the caps. See that part number right there? and the part number is identical, no differences at all, exact same part number, but this one's not removable, and the factory one that was in the truck was removable. Really strange. So I'm going to do some research and see what the real difference is between, you know, this one and the old Gen 2 filter, because it would be really nice if we could just change this element. It would keep this plastic housing out of the landfill. It would save money. It'd be easier to just, you know, swap these out. Cheaper. Lots of win-win-wins there. So anyhow, that's strange. While I'm talking about the oil filter, one thing I'll mention about this is that when you buy your new oil filter, make sure the O-ring is in the proper groove. It doesn't go up here. It goes back here in this groove. So make sure it's in the right groove so you don't have a leak. And you've got another O-ring here. So, you know, if you buy a new one, you may get these O-rings included in the box, or they may be already pre-installed, but just make sure they're in the right spots. And then rub a little bit of oil around them before you install the new one. And after you do that, you should be good to go. So I guess at this point it's just going to be sit back and wait, see what the results show when the oil analysis comes back. I'll probably post another video and kind of update you on what I found out with that. But that's pretty much all there is to it on oil change, do it yourself in the driveway. If you go to the dealership, they're going to charge you $200 to $250 to do what I just showed you. But you can do that at home for $100. Save, you know, a lot of money in the long run. So hopefully this video helps out somebody. And then in the future, those oil changes are going to be a lot easier thanks to that Fumoto valve. So anyhow, I appreciate you guys watching. If you have any questions, post below. And I'll talk to you later. Thanks.